Good evening. I'm Janie, and I'm going to tell you the story about a changeling out in Lee County, Virginia. It's written and told by yours truly. The Changeling, Woman at the Creek. Now, y'all hush up and listen, 'cause I got one tonight that ain't told proper in a mighty long while. It's an old story come out of Lee County, Virginia, back when the hollers were deeper and the nights were meaner. It's about a woman who wanted a baby more than breath itself, and how the mountains saw fit to give her one that weren't rightly hers. See, folks back then knew about changelings. They knew sometimes what's left in a cradle ain't what you birthed. The old one said you could tell by the eyes if they looked too old or too black, or if they never did blink. But love will blind a body faster than sickness, and once you take a thing like that in your arms, well, you're bound to it, one way or the other. So pour yourself something warm and keep that fire burning low, and don't let the wind catch your name. This here's the woman at the creek, and if you listen close, you might just hear her humming. What I'm fixin' to tell you happened right here in Lee County, long 'fore them big highways carved the mountains open. Back when folks lived by signs and not by calendars, when a crow at dawn meant something and a stillborn calf meant something worse. It's about a baby, or what folks thought was a baby, and how it near tore a family apart. There was a woman named Ellen May Turner, lived with her husband Jacob in a little cabin out past the North Fork near Rose Hill. Jacob worked the timber mills when there was work and trapped when there weren't. Ellen May, she was small and quiet, like a bird that had been scared one too many times, but she had a kind heart. Folks said she could make a sick child laugh just by humming. They'd been married near 7 years and had lost 3 babies, one stillborn, one took by fever, and one just stopped breathing one night before it turned 2. Some said the land was cursed. Others said Ellen May had the touch, the strange in-between power that draws both sickness and healing. Now come one late spring, when the mountain's laurels were blooming and the creek ran high with meltwater, Ellen May found herself with child again. She told no one for months, just tied a ribbon of red thread round her wrist and whispered to the trees for mercy. When the time came, the birth went smooth as could have been expected, though no midwife was there, just Jacob and the moon. And the baby came out breathing, crying, pink as a rose petal. Ellen May near broke down praising God, but Jacob, he frowned. Said the baby's eyes were too dark, black as coal pits, and they didn't blink right. Said when he first picked the child up, it was cold, not like a newborn should be, and it smiled at him right there, minutes after taking its first breath. Ellen May said he was tired, seeing things, and that all babies look strange when they're first born. But Jacob couldn't shake the feeling. That night, as the fire burned low, he woke to hear the baby laughing. Not cooing and not crying, but laughing. A deep belly laugh like an old man's. He went to the cradle and found it rocking itself, gentle and slow. The baby looked up at him, still laughing, and when it caught his eye, it stopped. Then it whispered, soft as breathing, "You ain't my daddy." Jacob nearly dropped where he stood. Come morning, he told Ellen May what he'd heard, but she said he'd gone mad with grief, seeing ghosts where there weren't none. She cradled that baby and sang to it, same tune she'd sung to the ones she lost. But the baby just stared, never blinked and never smiled again. Then the changing started. The baby grew fast, too fast, and by the end of the first week, it was sitting up on its own. By the second, it was pulling at the curtains, babbling in a voice that sounded too formed. Jacob wouldn't touch it no more, said it weren't his child, said he'd seen its reflection in the creek and the water showed something that didn't match what he held. He wanted to take it back there, to the place she'd washed its swaddling clothes and set things right, as he put it. But Ellen May looked at him out that night and sat up holding her baby, whispering lullabies till her voice broke. And outside, through the chinks in the wood, Jacob swore he saw two shapes watching, low and lean, with long crooked faces, watching the cabin through the trees. Now, I don't reckon there's a soul in these hills ain't heard tell of something watching from the tree line now and again. But back then, they didn't call it superstition. They called it livin with the mountain. You respected it or it took something from you. And what it took from the Turners that summer, well, that's why folks still hang iron over their doors come springtime. And the baby came, things turned wrong in ways that didn't make sense. The hens quit laying, the milk soured 'fore it hit the pail, and come sundown, the air'd get thick, like you could feel somebody breathing right down your neck. Ellen May said it was just worry. That grief made folks see shapes that weren't there, but she started acting peculiar herself. She'd wander to the creek at dusk with the baby in her arms, humming low, standing knee-deep in the water till Jacob come drag her back inside. Said she could see something moving under the surface. Said the creek talked to her in voices that sounded like her lost young'uns calling her name. Now Jacob, he weren't no fool. He knew the old ways. He'd been raised on stories of switchlings and night-takers, them fairy folk that stole babies from their cradles and left one of their own behind. A changeling, the elders called it. And if he'd had his way, he'd have done what old folks said to do, take the babe to the water at midnight, hold it out over the current, and demand its true name. If it cried like a child, it'd live. If it laughed, you threw it in and let the river take it home. But Ellen May wouldn't hear none of it. She said he'd gone mad, said the fever he had last winter had boiled the sense right out of him. She barred the door, kept that child clutched to her chest day and night, rocking and humming till her voice turned raw. Then come one night, a storm rolled over the ridge, thunder shaking the floorboards, rain pounding so loud you couldn't hear your own breath. Jacob went to check the window shutters, and that's when he saw them. Two figures standing out by the tree line in the lightning flash, tall, too tall, with skin pale as creek clay and eyes that shine like glass marbles. They weren't wearing clothes, not rightly, just something hanging off of them like moss or riverweed. And Lord help me, when the lightning struck again, he saw they had the same face. It was the baby's face. He stumbled back yelling for Ellen May, but she was already standing by the door, white as a ghost. Said she'd been hearing 'em calling, said they wanted their own back. Jacob tried to grab her, but the latch come undone like somebody'd lifted it from the outside. The wind near tore the door off its hinges, and that cold, wet air poured in. Ellen May stepped into the storm with the baby in her arms. Jacob said the lightning flashed one time, bright enough to blind a man, and he saw her down by the creek bank, holding that baby high like an offering. The water surged up, white and wild, and a hand, long, thin, and pale as bone, reached up from the current and took that child. The storm went dead still. Jacob ran down screaming, but there weren't nothing left in that water but ripples. Ellen May was leaning in the mud, rocking back and forth, humming to something that weren't there. When he pulled her home, she just kept saying, "They took the wrong one! They took the wrong one!" Now I ain't one to tell tales for fright, but what happened in that cabin after the storm, it ain't left these hills since. You can still feel it in the air up by the old creek road, thick as a damp wool. Ellen May didn't leave the house for near a month. Neighbors brought her food and laid it on the porch, then hurried off. She didn't speak to nobody, just sat by the cold hearth rocking, humming to the air like there was a child still in her arms. Jacob tried to tend to her best he could, but she'd look at him with them glassy eyes and say, "You don't hear 'em, do you? You don't hear 'em crying?" He told her the baby was gone, that she'd seen it with her own eyes. But she'd just shake her head, rocking faster, saying, "He's here. They brought him back. But he ain't right." See, Ellen May claimed that every night round the same hour, just after midnight, when the wind stilled and the crickets went quiet, she could hear a baby crying. Faint at first, like it was down in the floorboards, then louder, like it was behind the walls, crawling its way closer. Jacob said it was the wind whipping through the cracks, but the sound changed with the moon. When the night was dark, it whimpered like a hungry infant. When the moon was full, it laughed. Not the sweet kind, mind you, and not a giggle. It was a dry, hollow laugh, like a grown man imitating a baby and liking the sound too much. Jacob couldn't bear it. One night he grabbed the axe and started tearing up the floorboards, swearing he'd find whatever was down there. Ellen May screamed for him to stop, but he didn't, not till he found something soft. At first, he thought it was a dead rat, but when he pulled up the plank, he saw a bundle of cloth, old and wet, wrapped up tight. He picked it up and the cloth started moving. Jacob dropped it and stumbled back, but it unrolled itself like something alive, and out slid a hand, tiny, gray, and cold as stone. Then another, then the head. That thing, that changeling, was small, twisted, its skin pale as creek foam and slick like it had just come out of the water. Its eyes were black, no whites to them, and when it opened its mouth, a sound come out that made Jacob fall to his knees. It weren't a scream or cry, it was a word. Mama. Ellen May snatched the thing up before Jacob could swing his axe, held it to her chest like it was the Lord's own mercy whispering, "You come back to me, didn't you? You found your way home." Jacob was hollering, telling her that weren't no baby, that she'd pulled up a thing that stole her child, but she wouldn't hear of it. She just rocked that wet, cold thing by the fire, singing that cracked voice of hers till the break of dawn. When the rooster crowed, she'd turn to Jacob and said, "You'll have to feed him now. He's hungry." Jacob told the preacher later he never forgot the look she gave him, them black eyes glowing like a storm cloud, ready to break. And he swore when he looked at the thing in her arms, it was growing. Its hair getting thicker, its hands bigger, its teeth coming in too sharp. But the next week, the cabin smelled like rotten river water, and on the 8th night, the crying stopped. Now, if you've lived long enough in these parts, you know there's always a price for taking back what the mountains claimed, and sometimes it's blood, and sometimes it's worse. After that crying stopped, the Turner's cabin went quiet, too quiet. No chickens clucking, no firewood splitting, not even the smoke risen from the chimney. Neighbors say they seen Ellen May walking the road at dusk, humming that same low lullaby, carrying something heavy wrapped in a quilt. They called to her, but she never turned her head, just kept on toward the hollow. Jacob, though, he was a broken man. Folks said his eyes went wild. He talked to himself about voices in the walls and the thing that wore our child's skin. One morning, he come tearing through the town, hair half gone, clothes soaked in creek mud, begging for help, Said Ellen May had locked herself in that thing inside the cabin. Said he could hear 'em talking, both of 'em, like mother and child, whispering in words that weren't English nor any tongue a man ought to hear. Now, there was one woman folks went to when nothing else worked. Old Miss Rhoda Hale lived up near Stickleyville. She weren't no witch, but she knew the old ways, the ones folks brought over the mountains from Ireland and the old country. Jacob found her digging sassafras roots and near fell to his knees pleading for help. Rhoda looked at him long, then said, "You called something that ain't yours, and she took it in. You can't kill what ain't alive, but you can send it back." Jacob told her he'd do whatever it took. So she gave him a bundle, iron nails, salt, a bit of rowan wood, and told him he had to wait till moonrise, when the Changeling was the weakest. He was to go back to that cabin, speak the old words she'd written on paper, and make an offering. He asked what kind. She said, "You'll know what it wants when it asks." That night, the fog lay thick as milk. Jacob crept up the trail, heart pounding like a drum. Through the window, he saw Ellen May rocking by the fire, the child sitting on her lap. Only it weren't no child no more. It had grown near the size of a boy, skin gray as ash, hair thin and wet, and eyes dark and shiny. And it was humming with her, humming the same tune. Jacob pushed open the door slow, whispering them words Miss Rhoda had written. "By fire, by blood, by name undone, go back to the water where your kind begun." The air shifted, heavy as thunder. That thing stopped humming, turns its head slow, and smiled wide enough to split its face. "You brought me what I wanted," it said, voice deep and wrong. "You came yourself." Then Ellen May screamed. The floorboards buckled like something moving under 'em, and from the cracks rose hands, small, gray, and many, clutching at Jacob's legs, pulling him down. He threw the salt, the iron, the rowan wood, but the fire flared and went out all at once. He called to Ellen May, but she weren't listening. She was staring at the thing in her lap, tears streaming, whispering, "I just wanted my baby back." The thing leaned close and touched her cheek with a clawed finger. "You did," it said, "and now you'll feed 'em." The cabin filled with that burnt, sweet smell again, and Jacob said the shadows started moving like they had shape. He screamed till his throat tore, then the sound cut clean off. When the neighbors came at dawn, they found the place blackened inside like there'd been a fire, though not a timber was burnt. The cradle was empty, the floor wet, slick as creek stone, and Ellen May sitting in the corner, eyes open, humming under her breath, not her own voice though, a deeper one coming from somewhere down inside her. They buried Jacob on the hill, though they never did find much of him. And Miss Rhoda, she left a charm nailed to the cabin door, a cross of rowan bound with red thread, said it'd keep what was left inside from coming out. No one's lived there since, but on some nights, when the wind shifts, you can still hear a baby laughing from that holler, low and hollow, like it's waiting to be rocked again. Now most folks think stories end when the last grave's dug and the smoke clears, but in these mountains, nothing ever truly ends. The land keeps what's left of you, your name, your breath, your sins, and the creek remembers the rest. Years went by after the Turners vanished. The cabin rotted, roof caved in, vines crawled up through the boards. Folks said if you walked by after dark, you could still smell that burnt sweet scent, hear a baby laughing from under the floor. But time's a funny thing. It dulls fear till folks start forgetting. Then one summer, near 30 years gone, A travel come through from Big Stone Gap, a young feller named Earl Kinsey selling tonics and grinding knives for a nickel. He didn't know the stories, just saw the trail by the creek and thought to set camp for the night. Said later, least that's how it was told, that he'd heard humming not long after sundown. A woman's voice, soft, singing a cradle tune through the mist. He thought it was a widow or some lonesome soul, so he followed the sound. Down by the creek, the fog hung thick, curling like smoke over the water, and there she was, old as the hills, skin pale as wax, hair long and tangled with bits of leaf and moss. She was standing barefoot in the shallows, dressed wet to her knees, rocking something in her arms. Earl said he called to her, asked if she needed help, but she just smiled, slow and weary, and said, "Hush now, you'll wake 'em." He told her he was sorry, that he hadn't meant no harm, and stepped closer to see the baby she held. But the thing in her arms weren't no child. It was a bundle of gray water and shadow, shifting like it couldn't decide what shape to be. And when it looked harder, it smiled. Then when he saw her face, the skin was stretched thin and patchy, stitched in places with something red like thread or vein. Her eyes were black, deep and shining, and her teeth, too many, small and sharp like fishbone. Earl stumbled back, but she stepped toward him, the water parting round her feet. "You've come to take 'em, ain't you?" she said. "They always do." He swore he ran, up the ridge, down the trail, but he could still hear her singing behind him, voice carrying through the fog. "Sleep, my baby, sleep. The creek will keep you what the fire can't reap." He made it to Jonesville come dawn, face white as chalk, tongue near too dry to talk. Told his story to the sheriff, who rode up that way a week later. Didn't find no woman nor baby, just the creek running high, and a handprint burnt black into the rock where the water fell. Now, folks say that old woman's still there when the fog's heavy enough to hide your sins. Some call her the Creek Mother. Some say she's the last of the Turners. But the old ones, the ones that still hang horseshoes and salt their windows, they call her Ellen May. They say she ain't alive nor dead, just traded places with the Changeling she tried to save. And if you ever hear humming near the creek at night, you best not follow it. Just turn round slow, don't speak her name, and walk home quiet. 'Cause she's still looking for her baby, and if she can't find him, she'll take the nearest one that breathes. Well now, you see what comes of bargains made in grief. Ain't no love so strong it can call back what the waters claimed, and ain't no fire hot enough to deep out sorrow that deep. Ellen May Turner, that's what her name was, if you believe the old tales. She just wanted her baby back. But the mountain don't grant wishes, child. It trades. It takes what you offer and leaves you with something near enough to fool your heart till the heart stops knowing the difference. Some say she still walks the creek beds round Rose Hill when the fog comes down thick and white, singing soft to the river that took her child. Some say if you follow that hum, she'll mistake you for her own and drag you under to keep you. And if you smell that wet sweet scent of moss and milk, don't look back. Just whisper, "Rest easy, Ellen May. I ain't here for yours." Then keep walking, quiet as you can, till the night lets you go. 'Cause in these mountains, the water never forgets a name once it's been whispered into it.